Welcome to Wealth Wisdom. If you have ambitions to achieve financial success, please leave yes in the comment, and we are here to help you obtain insight and build wealth. The book we are going to share today is Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. You can probably earn more money, but you can never recapture time. John was just 35 when doctors told him he had terminal cancer. When his family received the bad news, John's wife Erin quit her job, and they enjoyed the time they had left together. After John's death, Erin was thankful for all their final shared memories. This story may sound a bit simplistic and, perhaps, a bit extreme, but it reminds us of a profound truth: our time on earth is finite. We must spend it carefully. But, when we think about the limited resources we all have, we rarely focus on time itself. Sadly, this approach can mean a wasted life. The key message here is, you can probably earn more money, but you can never recapture time. When people treat time as infinite, they tend to delay their gratification. Consider a 30-year-old who's looking forward to retirement. That's when she'll take that vacation to Italy. That's when she'll learn to water ski. That's when she'll go on that round-the-world trip. This may all sound sensible, but by putting these experiences off until her later years, our patient 30-year-old will probably enjoy them a lot less. Or even worse, she won't get to do any of these things at all. Why? The reason is simple: wealth is nothing without health. Even if you have the money and the time, will you relish climbing Rome's Spanish steps when you're old? Will you enjoy water skiing in your 90s? So why doesn't our 30-year-old get started on those experiences now, while she's in the prime of life? Because, like the rest of us, she's been taught to save money rather than spend it. The author used to do this too, until one day, he had a conversation that changed his life. This conversation happened when he was a junior finance worker. Despite his low salary, he saved every penny he could. One day, he boasted to a senior coworker about his savings. But to his surprise, the coworker wasn't impressed. Here's the logic he offered: the only reason the author took the low-paying job was to move up to a more senior role with a bigger paycheck. So, then, why put away the little money he has now only to give it to his older, richer self? This thought changed the author's financial approach. He started using his extra money to enjoy his 20s. In the next chapter, we'll explore how you can enjoy your money now while still investing in your future. Before we continue, if you are interested in this topic, please consider subscribing and give us a thumb up. Let's continue. Your experiences will pay you valuable memory dividends. We're all familiar with the concept of financial investments. You put your cash into stocks, shares, or, perhaps, property, and you hope that eventually, you'll get it back, with a profit. But what if you could invest more than money? What if you could invest your experiences, too? Imagine you blow $10,000 on a trip to Europe. During your travels, you make new friends, learn about other cultures, and expand your horizons. By the time you return, you feel like a whole new person. But how could this journey of discovery possibly be an investment? You won't get those $10,000 back, will you? And it's not a training course that will help you earn more in the future. So why is this an investment? Well, in order to understand this, we need to remember that money isn't the only dividend worth receiving. The key message here is, your experiences will pay you valuable memory dividends. Whenever you look at a photograph from your European odyssey or talk to a friend about the trip, you'll get a rush of pleasurable memories, and these memories will keep paying out for the rest of your life. Of course, the memory of your trip won't be as enjoyable as the experience itself, but that's okay. If you live a life that's varied and rich, then, one day, all the small dividends that are constantly being paid from your memory bank will come together. That flow of good memories will make you wealthy. But the wealth will come in terms of experience rather than cold hard cash. Maybe you're thinking that you will take that big trip one day, but you should put it off for now and focus on building up more cash. Well, here's one thing to consider: the earlier you set off on your travels, the more years you'll have to enjoy the memory of them. The author remembers how, when his father's health declined, he no longer had the ability to make meaningful new memories. So the author gifted him a highlights show reel from his father's college football career. And the old man said that was the best present he'd ever received. There are clear benefits to spending on experiences, but what happens when you're too busy working to spend your money? We'll find out in the next chapter. Die with zero or work for free. What if your boss asked you to work for free? Hopefully, you'd say no. But millions of Americans are doing just that. For years, they toil with zero financial gain. Meet Elizabeth, for example. She's a 45-year-old woman without children, and her annual net income is $49,000. But Elizabeth only spends $33,000 of what she earns. She puts the remaining $16,000 into her pension and savings account. By the time she retires, at age 65, she will have a total net worth of $770,000. This sum will include all those savings as well as her home equity. After retirement, Elizabeth spends $32,000 a year, until, 2 decades later, she dies at the age of 85. The key message here is, die with zero or work for free. At the time of her death, Elizabeth still has $130,000 in her savings account. This doesn't sound too bad, does it? Well, let's take a closer look at her finances. While she was still working, Elizabeth's wage was roughly $19 an hour. This means that the $130,000 she left behind equals over 6,000 hours of labor. That's roughly 2.5 years of work. But, now that Elizabeth has passed away, this is money that she'll never use. So, in effect, she spent all those hours working for free. Is there anything Elizabeth could have done differently? Well, she could have used a different approach to how she spends her money. This approach is based on a theory known as the life cycle hypothesis, or LCH. Here's what it says: the most efficient way to use your money is to spread out your spending. In other words, your outgoings should remain more or less the same throughout your entire life. This means that your wealth will dwindle as you get older, and, eventually, you'll die with a net worth of zero. Of course, nobody knows when they're going to die, so the LCH theory suggests that you should try to predict how many years you have left. For Elizabeth, this would have meant spending her wealth over the course of her entire life. Instead, she let it sit in her account, and, as we've already seen, that money represented 6,000 hours of wasted labor. 6,000 hours which she could have spent generating experiences and recollections for her memory bank. 6,000 hours in which she could have lived a much fuller life. Dying with zero doesn't mean spending your children's inheritance. Dying with zero might sound good in theory, but what if you have kids? Most parents want to ensure they leave enough of an inheritance for their children. Isn't spending all the money on your own entertainment selfish? In short, no. To understand why, ask yourself this question: how much of your wealth do you see as yours, and how much do you view as your children's? The key message here is, dying with zero doesn't mean spending your children's inheritance. Suppose you want to leave your daughter $50,000. Well, just think about this money as no longer yours to spend. And once you've made this decision, managing your wealth should become simpler. That's not to say you should die with the $50,000 in your bank account. Instead, you should aim to give your children their inheritance while you are still alive. Economic research shows that the vast majority of Americans only receive money from their parents after their mother and father pass away. By this time, an average American is 60 years old. But if you think about it, it makes far more sense to pass on the wealth before you die, while your children are much younger. Say, for example, you give your daughter the money when she is 30 years old. She will probably benefit from it more. If she has children, the money can go toward a comfortable family home. She won't have to struggle to make ends meet. Or she can spend it on experiences, and, as we've already learned, those are a far better investment when you're young. But many parents still hang on to their children's money. Sometimes this is because they fear developing chronic and expensive illnesses in later life. If this sounds like you, remember that it's cheaper to take out long-term care insurance than it is to save for a worst-case scenario that may never happen. This route may well be the answer to both giving your children their inheritance early and having your own future covered. Change is inevitable, so grasp every opportunity. You only live once, and you also only die once, right? Well, yes and no. While it's true we will only physically die once, it could be said that we experience multiple deaths throughout our lifetimes. You may be wondering what this could possibly mean. Well, the author offers this example. When his daughter was young, she loved watching movies with him. One film was her favorite. But one day, she said she no longer liked that movie. And just like that, the author's life changed in a small, but hugely significant way. He was no longer a father to a small child who wanted to spend all her time with him. Instead, he was a father to an increasingly independent person with her own interests. The key message here is, change is inevitable, so grasp every opportunity. In a sense, the person that the author was died that day. Just like the carefree, childless version of himself had died when his daughter was born. And just like the teenager he had been died years before. How is this related to the way in which you spend your money? Well, each time one version of you dies, so do the hobbies and passions that particular person had. You may, then, think of your life as a collection of time buckets. Each bucket consists of a period of time between 5 and 10 years long. For instance, if you're now 30, you could divide your remaining time into 6 or 7 more buckets. After you've time bucketed your life, think of all the experiences you still want to have during the rest of your life. Now consider at what age you would enjoy each of these experiences the most. And after you've done this, assign each experience to the relevant time bucket. This will give you a good indicator of how much of your wealth you should aim to spend in each period of your life. When you come to terms with the fact that each chapter of your life eventually closes, you can start to make the most of each chapter's opportunities and spend your money accordingly. Save enough for retirement, but not a cent more. So far, we've explored the benefits of dying with zero. But for many people, the fear of living with zero far outweighs these benefits. This is a valid concern. After all, what happens if you run out of money in your later years, when you're no longer able to work? Just how much money is enough to retire? To answer this question, you'll need to take a look at your net worth. You can calculate it by adding up all of your assets and then subtracting your debt. The number you're left with is your net worth. The key message here is, save enough for retirement, but not a cent more. If you're anything like most Americans, your net worth will increase over your lifetime. When you're young, for instance, you may have a lot of student debt and a low-paying, entry-level job. But as you get older, you'll probably pay down this debt. You'll have a succession of higher-paying jobs, and you may well become a homeowner, too. You might think that a continually rising net worth adds up to success in life. Surely getting wealthier is a good thing? Well, yes, but only to an extent. Your net worth can actually become too high. This moment comes when you have accumulated enough wealth that you could survive for the rest of your life without working. Let's look at an example. Suppose you need $12,000 a year to survive. You expect to live another 40 years. That means, in order to retire, you need a net worth of $480,000. In fact, you can probably stop working with significantly less than this amount. This is because your money and assets will accrue interest over time, so your net worth would decrease slower than you expect. In reality, you only need around 70% of your estimate to quit working. Interest rates will take care of the rest. If you want to get the most out of your time on Earth, you shouldn't allow your net worth to climb much higher than your survival amount. And when it does, begin to reduce wealth, rather than building it up. You might, for example, decide to spend more on great experiences or reduce how much work you do. The older you get, the more serious the consequences of risks become. Maybe you've heard the expression, the bigger the risk, the greater the reward. Well, it's not entirely true. In reality, taking a risk is a bit like backpacking around the world. You'll get more out of it when you're younger. Why is it better to be bold earlier in life? Let's take a look at a high-risk scenario. Imagine it's your dream to be a Hollywood star. To make your dream a reality, You move thousands of miles away to Los Angeles. You begin going to auditions and waiting tables to make ends meet. The risks are obvious, most wannabe actors never make it, and many wind up unemployed and broke. The key message here is, the older you get, the more serious the consequences of risks become. If you pursue your acting dream at the age of 21, the consequences of your failure are minimal. You're young enough that, if it doesn't work out, you can easily go and do something else. You still have the time to build an entirely different career. At this young age, you're facing an asymmetric risk. This means the upsides of success far outweigh the downsides of failure. In fact, when you're 21, you're actually taking a bigger gamble if you don't pursue your dreams. Why? Because you're risking a lifetime of always wondering what might have been. But things start to change as you get older. Let's say you quit your regular job, moved to Los Angeles, and started auditioning at the age of 35. By this time, you have a career, a family, perhaps even children. The consequences of your failure would be very different. It may be easy to accept that the downsides of risk get worse as you become older. But the upsides of success also diminish. Imagine, for instance, that you finally break into acting at 55. How many years will you have to enjoy your stardom? A lot fewer than a younger person might expect. The lesson in all this is to seize the day. If there's something you're burning to do, don't hang around, don't wait for more financial security. Life is finite, as are opportunities. What is unlimited, though, is the power of your dreams. That's the end of today's sharing. If you like our content, please give us a thumb up and share it with your friends. See you next time.